Hello, everybody. I am Zenith Rule, and welcome back to the Disney Debate, where we talk about Disney films and other Disney products. But before we get into today, where we have some things to talk about, oh boy, do we have things. How's it going, Kat?
I am Iron Dog. Do 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 do. This movie sucks.
She's not wrong.
Yes, I'm not wrong, and I'm not happy, and I don't want to do this. This movie is so bad, and I know I'm gonna go on a rant, but this movie. Ugh.
All right, before we get into a long rant, Eric, how are you today?
I am Shaggy Dog, Space Ranger, Universe Protection Unit. My ship has crash landed here on this strange planet. The ship has prevented me from hypersleep, and, well, apparently I have the ability to turn into a dog for some reason.
And there seems to be no sign of intelligent life anywhere.
Either here or in this movie.
So, yeah, we are now entering the final episode of the Shaggy Dog Marathon. Before we even get into this film as a whole, I think this is actually kind of a special episode because, I mean, today marks the end of the Shaggy Dog Marathon, and this was kind of the first big marathon we've done in terms of Disney, and there's going to be many, many more in the future as we go forth and as we touch upon, okay, like these are some really big, long things that are coming up, but Shaggy Dog is the first, and Shaggy Dog has given us some really, really good things. Shaggy Dog has given us the dog punch and a dog driving a car and these moments, like the dog on rollerblades. It has given us things that I did not expect it to give us.
Yes.
And I'm very happy with that. Would you guys not agree with that?
I fully agree. Like I said, I went into these knowing nothing about the movies other than, the whole transformation thing and that one line, and I was pleasantly surprised to find a really good comedy, at least in two of the movies. So, yeah, I'm really glad we did this, and I'm both sad yet happy that we're ending the month. Said I could have used at least one more movie, at least a good one to follow up this.
It's a shame then that the final episode of the Shaggy Dog Marathon ends on such a low note.
Then again, we all kind of expected this, because I remember seeing the trailers when this came out, and I'm just like, okay, and at the time I didn't see any of the Shaggy Dog stuff, but I'm watching and I'm like, all right, this is stupid. Like, I know what the premise with the original Shaggy Dog, but I'm watching this and I'm like, what are they doing here? I'm like, there's going to be some really bad CGI in here, is there? Sometimes I hate it when I'm right.
It's such a shame because this movie didn't need to happen. Like,
Nope.
we already explained with our charts about how Return of the Shaggy Dog does not fit in with the original timeline. Eric, can you using charts again? Can you give us a little bit of a rundown of where this film kind of takes place?
I could definitely say with the utmost confidence that the new Shaggy Dog movie equals Christmas. Why Christmas? I don't know. It just makes about as much sense as everything else in this movie.
This film, timeline-wise, kind of makes no sense. The original joke I made when I first saw this was like, this is Tim Allen going back in time to stop the events of the first movie from happening, but in doing so, he retconned the Borgia ring, so now we don't have that anymore. And now, with the Shaggy Dog 2006, it's a film about how science is magic.
Yeah, they pretty much turned the Shaggy Dog into the werewolf. That's pretty much what happens in this movie. No longer is it the work of a magical cursed object, and no longer is there any whimsy or anything involved. No, it's science attached to a apparently immortal dog who can apparently cause other people to become immortal by biting them and turning them into dogs as well. Yes, because that's science. That's chaos theory.
I actually kind of missed the magic part, like the whole magic aspect of it with the ring and stuff. That's what I thought they were going into what they were doing going into this. That's what I thought they were going to do. But seeing with the whole science thing, I'm like, it's not a bad way to explain the transformation, but I kind of like the magic element to it. Maybe it's because it's Disney, and Disney always does a lot of magic stuff. But it would have been cool. It would have been fun.
Mm-hmm.
It would have been interesting.
It would have, not involved crappy CGI.
Just crappy magical CGI.
So we started off Shaggy Dog with a magic ring that could transform someone into a dog. As we went down the line, the ring changed its function a few different times, but it was still a magic ring. And that's something that you can say even of the worst film, Return of the Shaggy Dog, you could say that at least it tries to stick to that original premise.
So basically, you know how with dogs, like they say for every 1 year of a human life, a dog lives 7 years? So like if a dog is like 10 years old, then if a dog is 10 years old in human years, then in dog years, the dog is like 70. So that's why dogs typically live like somewhere between like 10 and 12 years on average, for depending on the breed. So they take that. So in the movie, they take that logic and they kind of apply it to where the dog instead live. It's kind of like they reversed it, where like he's lived, where like he has like this kind of like this longevity gene or whatever. That's kind of like a reverse engineer kind of thing, and the dog is like 300 years old or something like that, and he's living alive and well in Tibet of all places.
Basically, he's Wolverine.
Yes.
Yeah, I just they try to explain it by saying that like, oh well, the dog is immortal and apparently he can like self-heal himself and his DNA can actually heal other animals, and they're making it sound like this big thing because the whole thing that jumpstarts the movie is that there's this pharmaceutical company that basically wants to create immortality, and they hear about this mysterious dog that has apparently lived for hundreds of years, so they capture it and they start testing his DNA on other creatures, which slowly turns, not only heals the ones that are sick and basically revitalizes them, but slowly turns them all into like half dog hybrids, which are really horrifying, especially with the horrible CGI in this.
Of course, don't you know anything about science?
Yeah. Yeah, so basically what jumpstarts the movie is that the pharmaceutical company gets set on fire by these activists, one of which is put on trial. That brings in our main character, the DA, what's his name? Dave Douglas? I'm just going to call him Tim Allen because nobody cares. Yeah, that brings in Tim Allen, and the whole thing is that he's trying to win this case while at the same time neglecting his family, who complain that he's never home and they never see him. And what happened to my dad? What happened to my husband? Like what happened to the man we used to know? And that old typical 90s cliche. And yeah, that pretty much launches into the whole thing with the Shaggy Dog, with his daughter, who's a activist. She finds the dog, who manages to escape, takes him home, and the dog bites the guy. And yeah, it's the whole werewolf syndrome thing where suddenly he becomes a Shaggy Dog through the bite. And that's our movie! Okay, we're done. Can we go home now?
It does not make sense, because first of all, the dog age reversal thing is never explained. We never find a reason why this dog is just like this. It's just a dog that randomly has a reverse aging gene. And I get that this sometimes happen, like a mutation, but they don't say that it's a mutation. They just say, oh, this dog has a different gene. That's it. That's all we get for why this dog is like a super mutant Wolverine Spider-Man. And we see the dog like praying in Tibet at the start of the film. And I remember when I first started the film, we were watching it together, Kat, for the second time, which I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But we were starting the film, and I'm like, is this still the Shaggy Dog? Because we're in the middle of Tibet. There's a helicopter like going overhead, and I'm like, what movie is this? But you have this dog that is never explained, and he's captured by Robert Downey Jr., Iron Man. And Iron Man is trying to use the gene to cure people with the help of his benefactor or whatever that he doesn't like. It's a plot point that we'll get to later. So when Tim Allen gets this dog because of his activist children, the dog bites him, and apparently genes, DNA is transferable through a bite. But also, there's so many things to unpack here. The bite itself breaks the skin because they zoom in on it, and later they zoom out and the bite does not break the skin, which is really, really weird.
Great continuity.
But so it zooms in and it has little CGI green dog DNA that is horrifying. Like, what? Didn't we just have dogs on rollerblades before? Like,
I can accept that better than I can accept the science. Because, so suddenly his DNA becomes like bacteria and is transferable through skin contact. Okay. I guess that makes sense. Not really.
And their first thought isn't that the dog is rabid or anything. Like, they never really... I mean, they briefly bring up rabies, but immediately Tim Allen is just like, no, that dog needs to be locked away.
I love how his kids, after he gets bit, they're like, oh no, don't punish him, he's a good dog. I'm like, he fucking bit him! He broke the skin! This is a weird dog that they found off the street. Your dad could possibly die from rabies or some other horrible disease, and you're defending the dog. You are horrible children.
You don't know what that dog has. He's been experimented on. And, I mean, we've seen some of the experiments. They're horrifying. There's a half-toad, half-dog that needs to die.
A bulldog frog thing. A bulldog frog. And it needs to be put to death. It looks like it hurts to beat it. Like, I feel bad for the creature.
There's a lot of horrifying things in this. And I think it really starts with the CGI, because in past films, we've had... all practical effects, even Return of the Shaggy Dog, and I will give it a lot of praise for this. It has practical effects.
Yeah, they have an actual dog, a trained dog, and, a mostly convincing puppet, and, a not-so-obvious body double. Here, it's just, ugh.
The CGI is uncanny. This film was made in 2006, and there are so many better CGI things that could come in that time period. It's just like, it's horrifying and uncanny half the time, but even still, like, even though we know it's not there or whatever, like, did you have to go the CGI route for this?
This was a time when there was a lot of heavy, like the 2000s movies had, like, for a lot of action stuff, had a lot of heavy CGI in scenes where, like, they were using it in, like, everything, to the point where, like, the audience was even picking out which scenes are CGI and which ones aren't. So this kind of doesn't surprise me that this movie has a lot of heavy CGI, only because for a comedy, even because it was made during that time. Because now we have CGI, but it's gotten to the point where it's kind of a mix between CGI and practical effects that they kind of that the two are meshed well together, that it's hardly noticeable unless you really look at it hard enough. So, but with the case with the 2006 Shaggy Dog, yeah, there's going to be a lot of CGI in this.
CGI inherently is not bad. I think that CGI should complement practical effects, and recent films have shown how to do CGI right. But here, every single effect, it's like, that's not there, or it looks like straight out of Nightmares. There's a scene where Tim Allen sticks out his tongue, and it's way too long, and it's the stuff of Nightmares. Eli, the cartoon hero, who is a big follower of the show and one of my good friends, he said that he still has nightmares from that scene.
I do too. That was just so disgusting. But I think the scene that's even more haunting is when one scene where he's transforming from dog to man, and you see like his real eyes poking through the dog's face, and it is absolutely horrifying. Like it is atrocious. It's like the movie became sentient, is now looking into your soul. Like that is how horrifying it is.
A lot of this stuff is just, it's really bad, and it starts in the lab when they capture the dog and we see these animals, and then when he's bitten with the CGI dog turds that look like hairs. Like, they make DNA into hairy CGI dog turds, and it's so gross. And that's just, it's like this is the bar for the movie. Like, in the beginning, while it doesn't feel like the Shaggy Dog, at least I could sense that maybe something interesting might happen. But the moment that we enter the lab with Robert Downey Jr., the moment that Tim Allen is bitten, like, everything goes downhill to the point where this is clearly the worst Shaggy Dog movie ever made. And, I mean, I have said in the past that what can make a movie worse for me is usually by being boring. Because normally by being, like, offensive in certain parts, I can get over it and see that, okay, there are certain parts that are well made, whatever. Being boring, it's a slog to sit through. But the problem with this over The Return of the Shaggy Dog is that every scene is infuriating.
The problem with this film is that it's both drastically different from the original, yet makes the same mistakes. Like, remember how I said that with that the beginning of the original and the end were probably like the best parts, and the middle was like a huge slog and a huge like cliche thing that they could have easily either cut down or cut out. That's basically this movie. Because once you get past the whole strange mystical Shaggy Dog thing, then suddenly it becomes a typical 90s cliche like family drama about, the workaholic parent that's never home and who neglects his wife and his kids and eventually learns a lesson. That's basically what happens in the middle part of this movie.
It follows those old, like, 90s tropes.
The other thing that's strange, too, is that in previous films, it's been about the Shaggy Dog doing things, human-like things, as a dog. Makes sense. That's where the comedy was originally derived from, and I think a dog doing human things is funny. A lot of the times, it is. Here, it's not about a dog doing human things. It's about a human doing dog-like things. It is the complete opposite of what the Shaggy Dog is. And it comes to a head in the fact that the dog cannot speak. in past films, the dog could speak, with human speech patterns and everything. I don't know how that works, but that gives humanity to the dog, which is what they were going for in the comedy. Here, they go out of their way to make sure that we only hear Tim Allen's thoughts, and we never hear the other dogs speak, but he understands them. And so it really is very disconnected from what the Shaggy Dog even represents.
Yeah, I can just imagine, like, if you made clever cuts here and there, the whole about a majority of this movie would be Tim Allen basically talking to himself, and because it makes no sense. Like, okay, fine, they didn't want the dog to talk. All right, that's fine. I noticed that lately a lot of films have been moving away from that type of thing. Trying to make it a bit more realistic, less kids Saturday morning cartoony, that type of thing. But it doesn't make sense why they only have Tim Allen talk, but not the rest of the animals. Because as we established in the Shaggy DA, he can talk to other animals, and we can clearly hear them talk back to him. But for some reason, they don't do this in this film. Instead, the animals, for the most part, are completely silent, aside from the usual animal noises. But, Tim Allen still translates for them. It's like, oh, you say this? Oh, you say this is how this happened? It's like, we'd like to hear for ourselves, thank you. I mean, at first I thought this was going to be like that movie, Look Who's Talking Now, with the two dogs who would talk to each other and all the other dogs they encountered, but nope. It's just Tim Allen talking to himself. And that gets pretty boring after a while.
Maybe they blew their budget on Tim Allen and Robert Downey Jr. and they couldn't afford other voice actors?
And shitty CGI.
It's funny you mention that, because it's not like Disney hasn't done this thing before, where having, the animals be able to understand each other but not having like their mouths move. They did it in the Homeward Bound movies. So I don't understand why they couldn't do this here. So which is more baffling. It's like, okay, like, all right, the humans can't understand the dog, but why can't the dogs be able to communicate one another? They've done it before. Why? Duh.
It just raises too many questions.
It simply isn't done, okay? It simply isn't done. And wow, that's something I never thought would come back, but I miss Cinderella 2 now. This film has made me miss Cinderella 2 and its brilliance compared to this steaming pile of shit. Because literally every little thing I was questioning, every single scene. So we have these problems, like we said, about the dogs not communicating with each other. But there's tons of scenes with him interacting with these animals and just talking to himself. And there's an entire scene near the end, a climax, where he has to take all these animals out. And he puts them all in his car. There's a snake, a really, really bad CGI snake, coming out the roof of the car. Nobody seems to notice it. That's because it's completely fake. Like, you can tell that it's, like, not there. And, he's driving down the highway like this, talking to the animals, clearly not being responded to. It's like, this whole plot point is infuriating because we don't understand what they're saying. It's like the Wookiee scene in the Star Wars Christmas special where you don't understand what's going on. But this is with Tim Allen talking over everybody.
Yeah, it's like I'm glad that this didn't make up a huge portion of the movie. Otherwise, it probably would have made it that much worse. But I don't know. I mean, the other human characters were pretty bad too. But like with this, it was just like, where's the comedy? I thought part of the comedy was just, seeing how the dog interacted with humans and with, other animals and, basically trying to act like he belongs to both worlds. But nope, we're just getting Tim Allen talking to himself and talking to all these horrible CGI animals.
Funny you mention comedy, because that's a funny thing to bring up. The comedy is about Tim Allen doing derpy derp derp derpy derp derp dog things.
Lord.
And it gets worse every single scene. It starts off with him eating cereal like a dog and not even noticing that he's doing it. And he just starts doing more and more dog things. Like there's a scene where he chases a dog from his yard by saying "my yard" 50 different times, making a complete ass of himself. And I'm like, Tim Allen, you're
better than this. What are you doing?
You're beyond this. This, even in the Santa Claus 3, it was better for him image-wise than this. The movie continues with him just doing a bunch of these humiliating things that aren't funny, and people just don't look at him too funny. There's maybe one or two stares, but they don't treat it like it's too odd of a thing. He's in the courtroom, and he puts a memo in his mouth, and Robert Downey Jr. has to take it out. So Iron Man goes up to Buzz Lightyear with a piece of paper in his mouth and grabs that out of his face. It's so...
I feel like there's a fanfic about that somewhere.
It's I've been face palming this entire time while watching this. It's not funny. It's humiliating for the actors. It's humiliating for the company. There's one scene in particular, though, that particularly draws my ire for everyone involved, for the people who thought of this. There's a scene where they bring in a canine unit, basically a dog that sniffs for drugs, which makes sense at a courthouse. Well, he gets in an elevator with Tim Allen, and he keeps trying to sniff his butt.
Aggressively.
Why? Aggressively, he gets right up in there, even when he puts a briefcase behind him. He keeps going underneath, and nobody tries to stop the dog. And this is a trained canine dog. They will not do anything unless they are ordered to do something.
Frankly, I'm surprised that either the dog or Tim Allen didn't try to hump the other one. Honestly, this movie was one leg hump away from just being completely revolting. Thankfully it never happens, but yeah, it gets that level of awkward. They even have a scene where he's peeing in the urinal and he lifts up his leg, and I'm like, no, I don't want to see this.
So the Rob Schneider movie where he becomes an animal, the animal. This is what this feels like, because it is really, really lowbrow, and I'm just I kept looking at this and saying, Tim Allen is the animal. It feels like a Rob Schneider script.
Actually, I'll do you one worse than that. All the scenes with him awkwardly portraying dog traits while not being self-aware of it reminds me of another bad movie that totally bombed. Catwoman. Remember that? Remember those scenes where she started exhibiting cat-like behavior, where she aggressively rubbed up against catnip? Yeah, that's what it reminded me of. That's a comedy, people.
The worst is when they dedicate an entire chase sequence of Tim Allen chasing a cat halfway across the neighborhood.
To the song "Who Let the Dogs Out."
Because why not?
As if the music was beating me over the head with a frying pan. I get it, because he's acting like a dog. and he's chasing a cat. Huh? Ha! Laugh, damn it!
And the worst part is that during this chase sequence, he knocks an old lady so hard that she goes flying off screen, clearly on wires, but like, I've heard people describe this as maybe the one funny scene. I'm like, no, it's violence to old people. It's not even funny in context because it's just he bumps into an old person, sends her flying while chasing a cat, and doesn't care.
You do have a point there because unless there was no you're right, there was no context for that, but as opposed to a movie like, say, Hot Fuzz, where Simon Pegg returns to town and he goes and he punches the old guy and then he aerial kicks an 80-year-old woman in the face. But the context is that they're evil and they've taken over the town, very cult-like. So at least they build it up for an hour and a half, building up of them realizing that, oh, they're the real villains. So at least there's context that was built up for this. Here it's just, oh, random old lady. Pfft. Oh, there she goes.
She's never brought up again. It's not like this is a very important plot point. It happens. And the big thing here, I think, is context. Like you said, everything needs to have a setup and a payoff. Sometimes non-sequential or non-sequitur humor can work. But for a film like this, it has to have some sort of setup. Looking back to the Shaggy DA, him going into a roller derby. The roller derby itself was random, but it was set up that he was being chased. He needed somewhere to hide, so he hides in a random place. And the humor was derived from the random place that he went to. It had a setup and it had a payoff, and it moved on to another portion of another scene, another thing going on. It just, when you have something randomly come out of nowhere, it needs to have a sense of, why is this here? And let me compare this to the quintessential non sequitur humor from Ed, Edd and Eddy. Ed comes up with some of the strangest things to say out of nowhere. But there's a reason for it because of his character. And if you look into the character, you understand why he is the way he is. The humor isn't just the writers coming up with things out of nowhere. It's coming from the character. So when I look at something like this, where a scene with an old lady just sent flying out of nowhere, and there's no connecting factor between this in any point in the film, character-wise or plot-wise, that's lazy writing.
Extremely. And speaking of lazy writing, the characters in this film are horribly written. And they're stupid and boring and bland, and I hate them. And the ones I don't hate, I felt are incredibly wasted. Like, I'm surprised they actually got some decent actors for this film. The problem is they have nothing to do. Like I said, we have Tim Allen, who's basically carrying the film by himself. We have poor Robert Downey Jr., pre-Iron Man, just trying to get a paycheck, basically phoning in a performance and acting as a more neurotic version of Tony Stark. And then we have weird side characters like Jane Curtin as a judge, and then Danny Glover as a lawyer. And it's like, you people are better than this. What are you doing in this movie?
What's the name of that kid? Spencer Breslin or whatever it is?
Yeah, Spencer Breslin. I believe he plays the son, right? I actually remember him from the Santa Claus 2 and 3 movie. That's the only thing I know him from, unfortunately.
Spencer Breslin is in this movie, and I think the unfortunate thing with Spencer is that he's a good actor. He has never been in a good film.
Yeah, yeah, you're kind of right. Like the closest I can say was probably Santa Claus 2, but even then, like, ugh.
It's a shame because he has acting chops. Like uh, he clearly can act, which is why he's been brought into a few different films. But I mean, we've seen in The Cat in the Hat, and God, I hope we don't have to cover that one. I can't remember if that's Disney or not.
That is not Disney.
No.
Okay, good. But he's been in these bad films, and you can see in here an inkling of something going on here, where you can tell he's a good actor, but he's given the most cliche plot point ever in the fact that he doesn't want to be on the football team, but his dad wants him to. He really just wants to be in a play.
Yeah, that whole plot point actually really annoyed me because they make it the typical, oh, I have to do this thing because my dad wants it to. But then at the same time, they have the whole, oh, workaholic dad who's never home. It's like, why are you combining those two? They don't make sense. Like, why would he bother being on the football team if his dad's not even home to witness it? Like, why would his dad be pressuring him so much if he's, not around and clearly doesn't care?
It clearly contradicts what the daughter said earlier on in the film, where she's just like, how are you going to ground me? You're never home.
Pretty much, and then I love his solution for this problem. So, yeah, the another plot point going on with this character is that not only is he playing a sport that he's clearly not interested in, nor is he any good at, but in order to get out of doing said sport, he starts flunking math on purpose, even though it's established that he's actually a smart student. And we later find out, not only is he doing this on purpose, but if his dad doesn't allow him to quit the team soon, he plans on flunking all of his classes until it becomes, blatantly obvious that he shouldn't be allowed to play football. It's like, really? You're going to jeopardize your GPA, any potential, like, colleges to go to, like basically destroy your entire future just to get out of playing football. And all because you don't have the nards to talk to your dad, who shouldn't really give a shit to begin with because he's never home. Really? Really?
It would have made much more. It would have made much more sense if, like, the kid was skipping out of football practice to go audition. Like that. That's what I thought watching this was good that they were gonna do. But it's like, no, he's still going to football. But I'm like, but what about the play thing? He seems more interested in that. So why does he doesn't? It would have made more sense.
It doesn't make sense either why he's even on the team, because they have a scene where they show him attempting to play football, but he has no idea about the positions. He has no idea about the plays, and I'm like, what kind of football team is this? They just let anybody join? I mean, I didn't play sports in high school, but I figured you at least had to, do tryouts and prove that you had somewhat of a capability for the sport before they allowed you on the team. Like that just made no goddamn sense to me.
Yeah, especially for a sport like football, because I mean that's like, you do something wrong, you can get yourself seriously injured. So it's like,
I mean, I do know some leagues are all-inclusive and they make everyone play, or like everyone who wants to play can play. But even still, this is high school football, and we're clearly in a place that is really big into football. And in many states, football is like huge, so big that like people will end careers over football because like they want to be in the NFL, and they want to they want to be the best that they can be in high school. And if you sabotage that's kind of a big thing.
Yeah, and the movie just gets worse from here. Like I said, poor Robert Downey Jr., my sweetheart, my poor sweetheart. Like, he's the villain in this film, and I feel like they were trying to go the same route as they did with Keenan Wyn's character in the Shaggy DA, because he does do some really heinous shit. Like the whole reason he developed the serum with the dog was to heal his boss, who suffers from multiple illnesses. He's in a wheelchair. He has a kidney missing and whatnot. And the serums were supposed to heal him. Well, when the time comes for them to administer it, he instead injects him with this serum to paralyze him for a good couple months. And while the guy's paralyzed, he would take over the company. And he was also apparently going to kill Tim Allen, in order to extract more DNA, to make their immortality serum. And yeah, inevitably, toward the end, he gets bitten. And you see throughout up to the ending, he exhibits basically the same symptoms that Tim Allen did at the beginning. He doesn't completely turn into a dog, but you see a tail, so it's just enough. But it's Robert Downey Jr. growling, barking, chasing after a stick, and I'm like, you poor thing. I know the 70s and 80s weren't good to you, but you poor thing.
The weirdest part for me is when he's on the witness stand and they throw the police baton, and he must be on wires or CGI'd in, because the jump that he does is so awkward. And he jumps and he puts some of his hands up and to the side and cocks his head, and I'm like, this whole film looks off. Okay, this whole film, just nothing looks right. But what they did to Robert Downey Jr. is just it's so sad. He's not a good character. There's no good characters here. The daughter sucks, completely unlikable. She just oh, you don't understand because you're my dad. And even though it has been pointed out to me that her entire exploits are funded by her father, and the t-shirt that she's wearing at the beginning paid for by her dad because she's not old enough to have a job. So she's a typical rebellious teen, and yet she's rebelling against the person who is her benefactor. The father is not a good character because he ignores everyone, even the wife, when she's clearly saying something important right in front of him, and he just ignores it. This is the very definition of a stupid man's plot, where they have to make every character stupid in order for it to make sense, and yet it still does not make sense. How do you do that?
Yeah, and speaking of not making sense, I love these transitions we have going. So yeah, you know how usually by the end of each film, Wilby typically finds a way to either break his curse or at least gets the ring back in his possession so he doesn't transform anymore. Yeah, they do something a little different in this movie. So obviously this is a genetic mutation. So you're thinking, okay, well, is he gonna get cured? Is it just gonna run its course? Or is he gonna find a solution to it? Yeah, well, one thing this movie has going for it is that Tim Allen's character actually figures out how to control his transformation, and he does it via the Hulk method, where as long as he keeps his heart rate down, he stays human. But if it's up, he transforms into a dog.
My secret is I'm always a dog.
Pretty much. So he even talks to the dog that bit him, who basically tells him, yeah, meditate and you'll control your dogness. And yeah, basically by the end, through the power of, heart control and love, he turns back into a human in front of his wife and kids, reveals that he's been telling the truth the whole time, is somehow able to control himself in the courtroom with Robert Downey Jr., even though I fully expected them to both go full dog at that point. And by the end of the movie, yeah, he still has dog DNA in him. They never address that. He doesn't go to any doctors or scientists to try to figure out how to remove it or anything. He just has dog DNA, and he probably can now transform into a dog whenever he so pleases. which, would be cool if this movie wasn't horribly set up.
Do you think they were setting up for a sequel? Because at the end of the film, they leave things kind of open-ended. Like you said, he never gets the dog DNA taken out of him. And they say at the beginning of the film that they want him to try out for DA. So...
I don't think they did. I think this was... It seemed pretty close-ended to me. But I don't know. I don't think it's ever going to happen. I hope it never happens. I just like to think that this movie is just an Elseworld thing that just happened, but now, you don't need to acknowledge that it exists. So.
I don't want to live on this universe anymore.
So this is the problem when you have the Shaggy DA had set the bar so high for us as far as antics. And then when we watch the other two films, it's like, ugh, this is nothing. I'm like, where's the pies? Where's the pies? Where's the dog climbing down the ropes? Where's the dog on the roller skates? Where's the shenanigans? Like it was really the best one out of all of them, but it's like
it was like we were on a fun, exciting roller coaster ride, and then it just dropped off into a sinkhole full of shit. That's pretty much how I can describe our experience with these movies.
It's strange because I didn't have any expectations going into this marathon. I didn't know what I was in for, like most of the films that we watch, because I like an open mind. I like to be, like to see things with fresh eyes. And the first film, while not great, it had an ending that was like, okay, I'm ready for more. And the Shaggy DA was pretty damn awesome. Like, it had its problems, but it was pretty damn awesome. And I keep looking back to the Shaggy DA. I'm saying just continue that formula and take out a few of the unnecessary jokes. Take out the ice cream man, and you have a movie. You can keep doing stuff with that, but as we've seen with Return and with this, they either missed the point or made a completely different film, because as much as they want to say that this is the Shaggy Dog, this is not the Shaggy Dog. This is not the formula. This is not even remotely similar. It is the complete opposite.
Actually, may I ask a question? Like, just to get your perspectives on this. Because after watching these movies, like, this thought had always been brought up in the back of my mind, but only now is it really apparent. Why have they never made the Shaggy Dog, like the actual Shaggy Dog, a villain? They have an enchanted object which they use to turn the man into a dog. He's now cursed as a dog for all eternity, and he spends that eternity trying to break his curse by basically trying to get somebody else to, take on the curse itself. Like, why did they ever just, have the dog, switch bodies with the character, like switch with Willoughby, or, any random stranger, or they reveal that, the curse is only, like, transferable in certain circumstances, and the whole race is for, Willoughby to try to get the ring back before he's stuck as a dog permanently. Like, why did they never go that route? Like, why do they always have to insert some other random-ass villain, just to add conflict, when they have this Shaggy Dog itself as a conflict? It baffles me. Like, I really hope that if they do actually remake this movie, that, in another decade or so, since that seems to be the trend now, that, they make it so that, make the dog the frickin' villain, and then, make the comedy around that. Like, is it really that hard? Like, would it be that difficult to write? I mean, what do you guys think?
I don't think it would be that difficult to write. I mean, that setup that you just described, it's been done before in movies and in television. So already it's an established premise that can work. It's just you take that and you just write the jokes around it. You write whatever silly situations you get it for the dog to get into. That's where that's where the real work comes into. I mean, the setup, I mean, that's easy. It's what you just said right there. That's an easy premise. Is the hard part is going to be working the jokes around it. I mean, if they get that part right, then.
And heck, they don't even have to make the dog a full-on villain. They could just make it so that, he was a desperate man who just, desperately wanted to get out of a horrible situation. And, eventually, the other character learns about his hardships and actually, decides to work with him to break the curse together. So that way they're both free. And if they had to insert one of their, random villains to, throw the curse onto someone who deserves it. It's not that hard. Like, I could think of so many different scenarios to, write this movie. It's just, oh, God, I wish they'd give it to somebody with talent. Please, somebody out there, make a decent Shaggy Dog movie. Make a funny one. Make it like it used to be, just better, please.
I really like your idea here, because the past two villains, being Robert Downey Jr. and Mama Cosma, that was in the stuff of legends. If you made the Shaggy Dog himself a villain, and they keep hinting at it, because even in the last film, even in this film, they have the Shaggy Dog kind of do things that are a little bit off, biting someone. And they have this segment with Tim Allen saying, "You bit me for a reason. You chose me. You knew it would be me. Why?" They kind of paint him out to be a villainous character, and maybe they were trying to set him up as some hero chooser or whatever. But what dog goes around turning people into dog humans on a whim? I mean, this is a dog that's lived 300 years.
I was going to say, I thought what they were going to do with the dog, that the dog is actually, I thought that the dog would actually talk to Tim, and, the dog is actually a human that has been turned into a dog and has remained in dog form for 300 years. And he's this wise, ancient old man, that kind of thing. And he's afraid that if he turns into a human again, he'll die because, he's been in dog form for 300 years. It's kind of what keeps him alive, that kind of thing. So I thought they were going to go that. I was waiting for them to go that route. Maybe we'll see the dog turn into its true form in human, but that doesn't happen. And I'm like, damn it! You could have gone that route. It would have been interesting.
Yeah, that would have been different. That would have been cool.
They never follow up on the dog itself.
No, it's just the dog's just a plot device. It's okay, boom, it served its purpose. We don't need to do anything else with it.
Okay, we have been talking for about an hour now, and while there is some stuff that I'm going to cut out, I think it's about time to wrap things up, guys. So, Kat, I'm going to start off with you today. What are your final thoughts on this abomination?
Robert Downey Jr. deserved better. I hate this movie. This is an awful movie. It doesn't need to exist. It doesn't fit within the continuity of the story of the Shaggy Dog mythos. It is worthless. It is even more worthless than Return of the Shaggy Dog, but because at least that one had familiar characters in it. This one, it's just a whole horrible cluster of 90s cliches, bad CGI, and bad writing. Just stuff it down the toilet and flush. That's my analysis.
And Eric, what do you think of this flaming pile of dog shit?
I will say one thing about Robert Downey Jr. He got better.
Oh, thank God. Thank God.
He got better because 2 years later he became Iron Man. But it's just, it's like watching one of those bad '90s movies where like the classic fish out of water trope where it's this father's not paying attention to his family. Well, then something crazy happens, and now he's using it as a way to spend time with his family, and it's like all those old bad '90s family movies that tries to do that kind of thing. It's a comedy for the whole family, that kind of crap. So that's what it reminded me of. And the thing that also threw me in, that also really got me was during the climax where he has to where Tim Allen is racing to try to get to the courthouse. He's stuck in traffic, so he turns himself into a dog and he's running through traffic, running through crowded streets of LA, and he jumps over a bridge, and at one point he says, "To infinity and beyond," and I'm like, really? They had to go there? I bet you they just ripped the audio off of Toy Story and just stuck it in there, because I'm like,
Pretty much.
did they have to? That was totally unnecessary, and that's only because oh, it's Tim Allen. Get it? So bad acting, bad CGI, just bad all around. It's one of those crappy remakes that Hollywood produces.
My final thoughts. This film did not need to be made. If they were going to remake it, they could have done so many other things. They didn't have to use science. They didn't have to do all of this, but it turns into one scene that's infuriating after another, and we didn't touch upon all the things that I didn't like about it, like how he turns back into a human in the courthouse and he's naked and no one reacts to this, or like how he sees his reflection as a human, puts his paw down, and before the reflection changes, he's a dog. So it doesn't make sense. Like, there's so much infuriation in every single scene. It's impossible to cover it all. And that's what really gets me. That's why I think this is the worst film in the Shaggy Dog marathon. And I think this is probably the worst film that we've covered on our show, because it is one of the only films where I refuse to see it again. I can't, watching it once was so painful, and it wasn't that it was boring. It was just every single scene I found something completely wrong and something off, and it just piled up, and we've seen what these films are capable of, and it's a bad sequel, so it's kind of like those Cinderella 2 kind of thing, but even Cinderella 2 understood what film it was. The Shaggy Dog remake does not understand that it's the Shaggy Dog. It completely goes the opposite way. So in a sense, it's kind of like Tokyo Drift, where it almost doesn't understand that it's from the same franchise as the other Fast and the Furious films. And it just, there are certain things that I'm just like, if anything was slightly changed, this could be better. But as it stands, this is clearly one of the worst films that we have ever seen for the show. And we're going to have to keep a running tally of the worst, because right now, like, this is actually worse than Savage Sam. I consider this worse than Maleficent.
Yeah, I'll agree with you there. I mean, I know we have much, much worse things to look forward to later down the line, but yeah, this takes the shit trophy right now. Definitely.
Okay. With all of that being said, next time will be much, much, much better, because now that we have finished the Shaggy Dog marathon, we are completely done with the 1950s. And with that being said, we are going to conduct our 1950s retrospective next time, where we cover our top films of the decade and our top worst of the decade. Now, I'm not sure if we're going to also do our worst list of, like, everything as well. I've been talking with Kat and Eric in our messages about maybe keeping a running tally of what we think to be the best worst overall, but I'm not sure if we're gonna do that or not just yet. I'm gonna keep talking to them and we'll figure something out. But for right now, next time for the 1950s retrospective, it's definitely going to be our top 10 best and worst of the decade, and there's a lot to sift through. We didn't have too many bad films now that I think about it, but we'll touch upon those when we get to them. In any case, I am Zenith Rule.
I'm Kat McBerry.
I'm Eric Y2 Staller.
And we will see you guys next time when we talk about the 1950s as a whole, and as we move forward into the 60s. So with all that being said, have a good one, guys, and don't watch this movie.
To the 1960s and beyond!
Thank you for watching the Media Meltdown. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more awesome videos. And if you like what you see, show your support on the Patreon page at patreon.com/Media Meltdown. See you all next time on the Media Meltdown.
Okay, so here's the Shaggy Dog, and here's the Shaggy DA. So somewhere along this timeline, it kind of goes off on a tangent like this. And that's where Return of the Shaggy Dog is. Where Return of the Shaggy Dog is here, the Shaggy Dog is over here, and somehow I have a chalkboard in the middle of my apartment. And don't... and my paintings are done. I was afraid that was going to happen. I thought I could be quick enough.